Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Yang Xiaozhe. The third elder immediately shifted his attention to Nangong Wan, as he said confusedly, Yang Xiaozhe. Was he the dragon god Doluo, Mu Yan's disciple back then? He should be a transcendent Doluo by now. Nangong Wan nodded and said, that isn't all. If I remember correctly, he is also the next heir of Shrek Academy's Sea Gods Pavilion. The third elder sat down beside Nangong Wan, and grunted coldly as he said, let him come. After all, our battle with Shrek Academy is a matter of when, not if. We have more than 10,000 soldiers in our great army, and we also have the Sun Moon Empire's 5 great soul engineer legions, while the supreme leader is holding down the fort in person. Even if all of Shrek Academy's elites were here, their effectiveness on a battlefield such as this one would be very limited. Nangong Wan chuckled and said, that sounds about right. Hurry up and eat. The third elder looked up at Huo Yuhao, who was beside Nangong Wan, and asked, Old Seven, I heard you've chased your 2 mistresses away. Huo Yuhao's expression darkened as he replied, Third brother, don't pick on my scabs. The supreme leader scolded me yesterday, so how can I not change? If you're interested, those 2 girls can belong to you. I'm just afraid that you can't take it. The third elder laughed and said, nonsense. You know I don't like such things. Huo Yuhao laughed coldly and said, how can that be? Why do I remember that you imprisoned a lady back then? It's not that you don't like such things, but that you are very focused in your love, ha ha ha. The third elder blushed as he said suspiciously, how did you know that? Huo Yuhao was naturally referring to the third elder imprisoning Nan Shui, which not even Nangong Wan knew about. Huo Yuhao said plainly, as long as you've done something, somebody will know. You're already so old, third brother, so why are you still embarrassed? All right, I've had my fill. I'm going back, and you can continue chatting with second brother. I didn't sleep well last night, so I'm going back to cultivate, so that the supreme leader can't say that I've been lazy. Huo Yuhao stood up after his speech and walked out. He didn't want to say any more, as he was bound to say something wrong if he did. It was better to minimize any interaction with these evil soul masters. The third elder said unhappily to Nangong Wan, second brother, why does Old Seven seem so weird today? Nangong Wan laughed and replied, that's probably because he isn't in such a good mood after the supreme leader chided him last night. But you know what's up with Old Seven, it's very difficult for him to improve with that martial soul of his. Huo Yuhao saw that Tang had also stood up to walk out before he left the canteen, and an idea occurred to him as he slowed his steps. Tang maintained a steady pace as she walked towards her tent after leaving the canteen. The evil soul masters didn't reside very far from the canteen. Huo Yuhao naturally shared a path with her, and he pretended to run into her as he slowed and said respectfully, Holy Lady. Yes, Tang acknowledged as she walked across his path, expressionless. She didn't pay any attention to him at all. Huo Yuhao made a quick judgment in his mind. From Tang Y's current situation, her mind had to be affected by some kind of restriction or spell, and her martial soul had been infected by evil toxins. However, those evil toxins were catalyzing her growth and improvement, and from the aura that she was giving off, she should be an 8-ringed soul Doluo. Evil soul masters cultivate really quickly. Back then, teacher Xiao was still quite some distance away from eldest senior brother's cultivation, but she has surpassed him now. Huo Yuhao watched Tang disappear into her tent before he returned to his own. Today's result is good. At least, I've seen Tang and that proves Nangong Wan's intel is accurate. Now, I have to figure out how to take her away. Huo Yuhao crossed his legs and began to meditate as he returned to his room, but his brain began to spin rapidly. How can I take teacher Xiao away safely? Furthermore, I have to ensure that we don't sustain any injuries or losses. The Sun Moon Empire's camp was rather peaceful, because there were no battles, and only the occasional sounds of training soldiers could be heard from time to time. This area where the evil soul masters resided was separated from the rest, and there were no soldiers patrolling this area, so there wasn't much noise. A day quickly passed. Huo Yuhao didn't wait for Nangong Wan to arrive at midday, as he went ahead to the canteen to eat. He deliberately went ahead early to avoid the powerful evil soul masters, before he returned to his tent to continue cultivating. From the other evil soul master's perspective, the seventh elder began to put in effort after the supreme leader had scolded him, so nobody suspected him. Darkness befell the heavens as the sky became completely dark, before Huo Yuhao opened his eyes in his tent. The tent was very dim, but Huo Yuhao's eyes were bright like the stars in the night sky. It's time to test the waters. A thread of white light emerged from Huo Yuhao's eyes, and his entire body seemed to quiver, as the light around him contorted a little. A figure appeared soundlessly in front of him. This figure seemed small and cute, and it was about as large as an infant, but it looked identical to Huo Yuhao. The light became increasingly material, like it was a real tiny person. This was Huo Yuhao's spiritual avatar, that he had conjured with his concrete material spiritual power. Huo Yuhao had created a spiritual soul core, so his spiritual avatar was much stronger than before. His spiritual avatar could use some of Huo Yuhao's soul skills, and people couldn't even tell that his avatar was made from energy, just by looking with their eyes. The mini Huo Yuhao glanced at his original body before he vanished into the air with a flash. Yes, that was imitation. Huo Yuhao's spiritual avatar could only use his spirit eye's soul skills. However, using a soul skill would consume part of his spiritual avatar's origin energy, and once his avatar's origin energy was depleted, it would crumble. Huo Yuhao's spiritual avatar left the tent under the cover of imitation, and soundlessly approached Tang Ya's tent. Huo Yuhao didn't go inside once he arrived outside Tang Ya's tent. Who knew whether Tang Ya had a spiritual barrier around her? Huo Yuhao would reveal his original body if he was discovered, and everything that he had discovered before would go to waste. Huo Yuhao circled around Tang Ya's tent before he circled another time around a large golden tent not far from there before he snuck further away. He wouldn't go into a tent to investigate things right now, because he could be easily ambushed or trapped if he did so. He had to be sure about the army camp's situation as a whole before anything else. Furthermore, there was a more important place he had to find. Huo Yuhao could only use his spiritual avatar to walk briskly around the army camp, because he couldn't use spiritual detection, though he could walk around very freely and casually because of imitation. The Sun Moon Empire's army camp undoubtedly had all kinds of surveillance soul tools, but these surveillance soul tools were directed outwards, not inwards. Who would be so bored as to investigate their own soldiers' situation? The reason why Huo Yuhao made his spiritual avatar so small was both to conserve spiritual power, and also because a small body was harder for the surveillance soul tools to detect. Huo Yuhao moved very quickly, and he went almost one full round around the army camp, before he quietly returned to his own tent. His spiritual avatar returned to his original body, and everything returned to normal. Huo Yuhao's eyes opened again, and the masquerade dolor's expression became extremely solemn. Huo Yuhao could see a lot more clearly after investigating at such close proximity. The Sun Moon Empire's layout was seamless, and almost entirely impenetrable. There were many soldiers guarding their 5 soul tool fronts. There were no surveillance soul tools pointed inwards in the army camp's other places, but there were some around the 5 soul tool fronts. Everybody who came near had to be interrogated. Huo Yuhao didn't dare to let his spiritual avatar go close to those soul tool fronts. Furthermore, he could feel that there were linked formations which were continuously activated within those fronts. Even though he wasn't sure that they were doing, he had no doubt that they possessed formidable defensive or offensive capabilities. One misstep and he would be discovered and become cannon fodder. Huo Yuhao had originally hoped to find one of the Sun Moon Empire's storage soul tools, or a warehouse that housed stationary soul cannon shells, which he could detonate at the appropriate time. He would create much chaos in the army camp if that happened, and cooperating with the Heavenly Soul Empire when the time came would be most effective. But it seemed like he had to change his plan, because he couldn't find any warehouses that stored soul tools. There was no question that these warehouses were contained within those soul tool fronts, which meant that he would have to break through the soul tool front's defenses if he wanted to bomb those warehouses. Not even Elder Song could do that even if she was here, not to mention Huo Yuhao. What should I do? Huo Yuhao's eyes squinted as he contemplated long and hard. This was very important for him, because insufficient chaos wouldn't give them sufficient time. The night was peaceful, and everything seemed to return to tranquility. The Sun Moon Empire increased their ground-based aerial surveillance, but they didn't discover anything. The Heavenly Soul Empire also seemed particularly calm and quiet. The Holy Ghost Church's evil soul masters discovered that, over the past 2 days, their 7th elder had become particularly hardworking. He didn't touch any girls, and he remained in his tent to cultivate effortfully. He was almost not seen at all in the day. Dinner, on the second night. Huo Yuhao deliberately called Nangong Wan before eating dinner, and they walked towards the evil soul master's canteen together. Third elder, can you find an empty and remote place for me? It would be better if this place wasn't inside this core area, and best if it was near any of the 5 soul tool forts. That place must be quiet and uninhabited. Huo Yuhao passed a message to Nangong Wan with his mind. Nangong Wan was momentarily stunned. He forced a laugh and said, I'm afraid that's a little difficult. The areas closer to those soul tool fronts are heavily guarded, and well equipped with all sorts of surveillance soul tools. It's almost impossible to do something around them without being discovered. Are you guys ready to make your move? A worried expression appeared on his face as he spoke. Huo Yuhao said plainly, you don't have to worry, third elder. We will give you a way out even when we execute our plan. You have to help me find such a place as fast as possible, and if it really isn't possible, a location slightly further away from those soul tool fronts is also acceptable, but it has to be further away from where we are. Only then can we move according to our plan. Nangong Wan knew that he no longer had a choice. He was most afraid of Huo Yuhao's identity being revealed, because Huo Yuhao had returned with him as the masquerade Doluo. Nangong Wan would also be exposed if Huo Yuhao was discovered. All right, I'll try my best. Nangong Wan scurried away after dinner. He was much more familiar with the situation inside the army camp than Huo Yuhao was. Nangong Wan came to Huo Yuhao's tent to find him after 2 hours. There's a solution, Tang Wu. Nangong Wan still thought Huo Yuhao was Tang Wu up until now. Huo Yuhao frowned and replied, call me Masquerade. Nangong Wan froze for a moment. All right, Masquerade, I think we have an opportunity, and it's quite a good one at that. The Holy Ghost Church has the authority to supervise and survey the army. The Supreme Leader has just passed the order for us to patrol several soul tool fronts tomorrow afternoon. The 2 fronts that belong to 2 of the hand that protects the nation's 2 soul engineer legions are a little more troublesome, because they don't show us much respect. The other 3 fronts that are responsible for defense that belong to normal soul engineer legions are more polite toward us. Why don't we take a trip down together, so you can find an opportunity? Huo Yuhao was elated when he heard the news. That's fantastic, let's do it then. Tell the Supreme Leader that I will accompany you on patrol tomorrow. All right, Nangong Wan acknowledged, and he hesitated before he then continued, if you execute your plan tomorrow, what happens to me? Huo Yuhao answered, don't worry, I'll find an appropriate solution for you. When everything happens, I'll fake my death, and all you have to do is pretend you have no idea about anything. As for the restrictions on your body, we will help you remove them once we fully execute our plan. You're a smart man, and you should understand that something bad will happen to you if you foil our plan. Nangong Wan hurriedly said, of course, of course. Don't worry, as long as you keep your promise to remove my restrictions, I will help you as much as possible even if you look for me again next time. Nangong Wan had taken Huo Yuhao, the masquerade Doluo, back together with him, and that meant he had a hold on Nangong Wan. Huo Yuhao wasn't at all worried that Nangong Wan would expose him in their operation. As for what would happen afterwards, Huo Yuhao didn't consider that too seriously. Who knew how things would unfold? How could Nangong Wan follow his instructions if there wasn't something to threaten him with? But rescuing Tang Yue was of the utmost importance for everyone from Shrek. Huo Yuhao immediately sealed his tent with a spiritual barrier once he escorted Nangong Wan away, before he swiftly summoned his spectral gate and began to discuss his plan with his companions. The most important component of his plan was executable with Nangong Wan's intel, and the next step was to iron out the rest of the plan perfectly. They would act tomorrow night. Huo Yuhao returned to his tent after discussing inside his spectral demiplane for 2 hours. His spiritual barrier was very normal, and it wasn't triggered at all, but Huo Yuhao didn't rest. Instead, he conjured another spiritual avatar, as he sent it out of his tent, and he followed the path that he had scouted several days ago, as he swiftly left the camp and disappeared into the distance. The Sun Moon Empire surveillance soul tools that pointed outward covered every corner, but not every kind of soul tool could do that task. Huo Yuhao found a few loopholes after investigating for 2 days. His spiritual avatar wasn't afraid of thermal detectors, and he also had help from imitation. Huo Yuhao evaded the oscillation detectors and spiritual detectors before he slipped out of the camp and went straight for Heaven Do City. His spiritual avatar was carrying the signal soul tool that Princess Wei Na had given him. Huo Yuhao's spiritual avatar returned quietly after 2 hours, and it slipped back into the army camp with the same method as it swiftly returned to his tent and integrated back into his body. Preparations were mostly complete, and the next step had to be left until tomorrow. It was late into the night, and Huo Yuhao glanced in the direction of Tang Yue's tent before he closed his eyes and began to meditate. He had to maintain his peak spiritual condition for tomorrow's operation. Huo Yuhao got up very early in the morning and cultivated his purple demon eyes before he proceeded towards the canteen. He was walking when he suddenly sensed something, and subconsciously turned to look back, and he saw Tang Yue, who was calmly walking in the same direction. Huo Yuhao had seen Tang Yue a few times over the past 2 days, but Tang Yue almost never spoke with anyone. She was like a statue, or rather, she was like the walking dead. But Huo Yuhao could be sure that Tang Yue hadn't completely lost her consciousness. Otherwise, what use would this holy lady be for the Holy Ghost Church to use in the future? The Holy Ghost Church was probably hoping that she and Ma Xiaodao would carry the Holy Ghost Church forward. How would that be possible if they were just puppets? Holy Lady, Huo Yuhao stopped and walked over to Tang Yue as he bowed. Hey, Tang Yue nodded, but she still responded as coldly as ever. Just as Huo Yuhao thought she would walk past him to eat, Tang Yue suddenly stopped and turned around to face him. She said coldly, "Seventh Elder, your aura seems to have changed. Are you having any problems with cultivation recently?" Eh? Huo Yuhao's heart skipped a beat. This was the first time that he had heard Tang Yue speak after coming into this place undercover. Tang Yue's voice wasn't very different from back then, but her voice no longer had any emotions, like she was just a machine talking. Holy Lady, what kind of changes are you talking about? Huo Yuhao's mind was very stable. He wasn't caught off guard by the sudden change in circumstances, and he asked her a question instead with a smile on his face. Tang Yue seemed taken aback as she frowned and said, "I can't quite put a finger on it. I just find that your aura has become more intimate than before, like there's more familiarity. You're not as despicable as before." Tang Yue didn't attempt to mask her feelings when she said that she despised the masquerade d'Oluo. That surprised Huo Yuhao, because even though Tang Yue was the holy lady, she was just a soul d'Oluo. She wasn't polite at all to this elder. Blue silver. An elderly voice could be heard at this moment. Huo Yuhao felt his entire body tense up when he heard this voice, and he hurriedly took a few steps back as he spoke respectfully to where this voice was coming from. "Greetings, Supreme Leader." Didn't that old voice belong to the Holy Ghost Church's Supreme Leader, Zhongli Wu? Tang Yue wasn't as reverent as Huo Yuhao was. Instead, she simply bowed faintly as a gesture in Zhongli Wu's direction. Zhongli Wu came beside Tang Yue, and removed the hood on his head. This was the first time that Huo Yuhao got a look at the Holy Ghost Church's supreme leader at such close proximity. Zhongli Wu's hair was short and silver, and his hair was very thin and dense, and very sharp and tough, like steel needles. His eyebrows were thick, his eyes were bright, and he was actually extremely handsome. His eyes were dark purple, and faintly exuded a deep and profound aura. Nobody could feel his aura as an evil soul master just by looking at his physical appearance. He looked very young, and if not for his silver hair, he would have passed a middle-aged man. But Huo Yuhao knew that Zhongli Wu was only one generation younger than his teacher, Mu Yan, and the death god Doluo, Yi Shishui. He was probably more than 180 years old, yet he still looked very young. I didn't say much. Tang Ya responded coldly to Zhongli Wu's doubts, and Huo Yuhao heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Zhongli Wu smiled faintly and said, "Are you still hating on Seventh Elder? He didn't mean to scare you back then. I didn't expect you hold grudges. I've already instructed him not to unleash his demonic maggot in front of you, no matter what, so you don't have to worry. Come, let's eat." Zhongli Wu immediately grabbed Tang Ya's hand as he spoke, and they walked towards the canteen. Huo Yuhao felt a little strange when he witnessed how intimate Zhongli Wu was with Tang Ya. Can it be that Zhongli Wu is pining after teacher Xiao Ya, but is already 180 years old? Huo Yuhao watched Zhongli Wu and Tang Ya walk towards the canteen, and he could only grit his teeth and follow at the back to prevent any suspicion. Zhongli Wu suddenly stopped walking at this moment. Huo Yuhao felt his heart skip a beat. Has he discovered something? Zhongli Wu turned around to look at Huo Yuhao and said, "Masquerade, you cannot come along. The Blue Silver Holy Lady doesn't have much of an appetite with you around. Go back, and have your meal later." Huo Yuhao was overjoyed when he heard those words, and he bowed respectfully toward Zhongli Wu like a great burden had been lifted from his chest before he turned to leave. "Who wants to eat with you guys?" Huo Yuhao swiftly returned to his tent, and exhaled deeply once he stepped in. That was so close. Teacher Xiao Ya seems to have discovered something. Fortunately, she seems a little dense and inarticulate, and she didn't bring it up to Zhongli Wu. For Huo Yuhao, the safest choice would be to run away as quickly as possible so that he could prevent any unforeseen dangers. But could he really leave? Everything that he had prepared and worked for would be wasted if he did. I can't leave, so I'm going to take a chance. I have to bet that teacher Xiao Ya hasn't recognized me, and she hasn't mentioned anything to Zhongli Wu. Huo Yuhao couldn't help but feel a little nervous as his thoughts stopped there. Everything that he had worked for would be wasted if he was discovered now, and he would also find himself trapped in dire danger. Huo Yuhao recalled the interactions between Tang Ya and Zhongli Wu previously, and discovered some useful things. For example, the masquerade Doluo had used his demonic maggot to scare Tang Ya and cast a shadow in her heart. Furthermore, Zhongli Wu pampered her a lot. It didn't seem like they had romantic feelings between them. Rather, it felt like Zhongli Wu was protecting her. What kind of feeling was it? It was very weird. Waiting was sometimes a torture, especially in the situation that Huo Yuhao was facing. Waiting for an hour was like waiting for half a century. Finally, Huo Yuhao calmed himself down. Things should be fine since there's been no reaction for half a day. It seems like I'm in luck. After walking out from the tent, Huo Yuhao observed his surroundings as he proceeded towards the canteen. Indeed, Tang Ya and Zhongli Wu were no longer there. Things were very normal. He went to find Nangong Wan again. Seeing that he was fine, he verified that he had averted the crisis. The afternoon passed just like that. Huo Yuhao only completely calmed down after lunch. He meditated in his tent for an hour before Nangong Wan came to find him. 7. Let's go and take a look. Nangong Wan's voice rose outside the tent. Huo Yuhao drifted up and walked out of the tent. Not only was Nangong Wan around, but there were also 6 other evil soul masters with weaker cultivations. They all had at least 6 rings. According to what Nangong Wan had told Huo Yuhao, the Holy Ghost Church sent only those who were at least soul emperors to the front line. There were very few evil soul masters, and nurturing them wasn't easy. It was very likely they would die at the front lines. That was why only those who could protect themselves were sent over. Go. Huo Yuhao calmly said, and followed Nangong Wan. Nangong Wan said, 3 and 4 have been sent to supervise the 4th Soul Engineer Legion. Let's go take a look at the 2nd Soul Engineer Legion. All right, Huo Yuhao replied. Having Nangong Wan as a mole was very effective. The intelligence that he brought to Shrek Academy gave the Academy a new understanding of the Sun Moon Empire's setup. The Sun Moon Empire had originally only had 10 Soul Engineer Legions. However, all the other Soul Engineer Legions from other empires were brought under their control after the war started, allowing them to form another 5 Soul Engineer Legions. In this way, the Sun Moon Empire now had a total of 15 Soul Engineer Legions. Among them, the 5 Soul Engineer Legions in the hand that protects the nation were the strongest. The other 10 Soul Engineer Legions were ordered. Right now, there were 5 Soul Engineer Legions at the front line. Apart from the Imperial Dragon Soul Engineer Legion and Terraclaw Soul Engineer Legion, there were also the 2nd, 3rd and 4th Soul Engineer Legions. As for the other 10 Soul Engineer Legions, the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineer Legion was stationed in the capital. Unless they were commanded by Xu Tianran personally, they wouldn't leave easily. The Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion was also in the capital right now. The Evil Tyrant Soul Engineer Legion had teamed up with 2 other Soul Engineer Legions to deal with the Soul Master teams from the Star Luo Empire that were scattered all over the Sun Moon Empire's territories. The remaining Soul Engineer Legions were also arranged in their own ways. The Sun Moon Empire relied on these 5 Soul Engineer Legions and their elite soul tools at the front lines to suppress the coalition army of the 3 empires of the original Doluo continent. In fact, the Heavenly Soul Empire had been battered so heavily that they were quite afraid by now. In the fights before, they had suffered heavy casualties. To keep Heavenly Spirit City intact was already the best that they could achieve at this stage. The initiative lay in the hands of the Sun Moon Empire now. The Sun Moon Empire had their own plans. In the report that Zhu Zi gave to Xu Tianran, they indicated that they wanted to consolidate the new territories they had obtained from the Heavenly Soul Empire first. Given the strength of the Sun Moon Empire, they could definitely take the entire Heavenly Soul Empire down. However, that would also mean that the Sun Moon Empire would need to protect more land. When that happened, the Sun Moon Empire would also have to take on the Douling and Star Luo empires directly. Once the Heavenly Soul Empire was destroyed, the remaining 2 empires would have no choice except to fight all out. Along with the threat of Shrek City, the Sun Moon Empire would also have no other option but to fight. To the overall plans of the Sun Moon Empire, this wasn't a good thing. At least, it wasn't good if they weren't prepared. Without the confidence of attaining complete victory, Zhu Zi suggested that the Sun Moon Empire shouldn't rush to destroy the Heavenly Soul Empire. Xu Tianran adopted her suggestion. As he consolidated the territories that they had, he quickly adjusted their resources to produce more Soul Tool accessories. Through Soul Tool technology, he slowly influenced the people in the parts of the Heavenly Soul Empire that had fallen to the Sun Moon Empire. This would gradually get them to accept reality. War couldn't achieve their aims immediately. Zhu Zi's plan would take as long as 10 years. In her complete plan, domination of the continent would take at least that long. Although Xu Tianran thought that this was a little too long, her detailed plan still managed to convince him. Even the senior commanders of the Sun Moon Empire approved of her plan after reviewing it. The plan raised Zhu Zi's reputation in the Sun Moon Empire. After this plan was drafted, she had headed into the north to gather rare metals. However, she had bumped into Huo Yuhao, who had ruined her plan. Zhu Zi's status in the military was very important to Xu Tianran. As a result, he even took the initiative to cover up her setback. An unbeaten female god of war was very helpful for morale. It was something that mustn't be affected easily. Currently, the 5 Soul Engineer Legions at the front line had been there for some time. Among them, the Imperial Dragon and Terraclaw Soul Engineer legions were very strong. They didn't even give face to the Holy Ghost Church. The Holy Ghost Church had faced quite a few problems trying to supervise these two Soul Engineer legions. They only took orders directly from the Sun Moon Empire's imperial family. Although Zhongli Wu had wanted to force a check on them, the Holy Ghost Church still had many objectives to be achieved in the Sun Moon Empire. It wasn't advisable for him to offend Xu Tianran. After all, Xu Tianran was the emperor. The Sun Moon Empire was also very influential and powerful now. Although the Holy Ghost Church was also very powerful, and even had two ultimate Doluo, how could a sect compete with an entire empire in terms of overall abilities? As a result, Zhongli Wu could only bear it and perform circumstantial supervision on them. While the Beast Lord rank Soul Engineer legions were unwilling, the other three ordinary Soul Engineer legions were helpless. Just like how Zhongli Wu didn't want to offend Xu Tianran also didn't want to offend the Holy Ghost Church. There was something that he shared with the Holy Ghost Church. They wanted to borrow each other's strength to deal with Shrek Academy. While Shrek Academy hadn't seemed to do anything in the war so far, both Xu Tianran and Zhongli Wu were very wary of them. "We're here." Nangong Wan alerted Huo Yuhao. There was a soul formation not far in front of them. There were already senior commanders from the 2nd Soul Engineer Legion waiting outside the soul formation after they received their orders. The person standing in front was a middle-aged man around 50 years old. He was tall and burly, and his aura was overwhelming. He was obviously a Soul Doluo. "Greetings, Your Majesty." That middle-aged man came up to receive them. Your Majesty was how they referred to title Doluo. In the world of title Doluo, they didn't call one another that. However, it was how lower-ranked Soul Masters showed their respect when they saw title Doluo. "Show us the way." Nangong Wan was much more arrogant when he saw these ordinary Soul Masters. Huo Yuhao didn't say anything. This middle-aged man was the Legion commander of the 2nd Soul Engineer Legion, Guo Enyu. He was a Soul Doluo, and a Class 8 Soul Engineer. Ordinary Soul Engineer legions were led by Class 8 Soul Engineers. After all, there were very few Class 9 Soul Engineers, even in the Sun Moon Empire. Guo Enyu stood to one side and gave way to the both of them. He personally showed them the way. This was Huo Yuhao's first time entering a soul formation of the Sun Moon Empire without fighting them. After entering, he immediately sensed a strong killing aura sweeping across him. Lethal soul tools were neatly arranged, almost all long-range soul cannons. Looking in from the outside, it really looked like a forest of steel. Huo Yuhao made an estimate as he looked over. There were more than 100 long-range soul cannons. As for why they were of different classes, it was because their effective ranges and strengths were different. Not only could they overlap one another, but they could also conserve soul power for short-range attacks. These soul cannons were just covering the perimeter. There were larger soul tools in the middle. There was even a Class 9 soul tool, and soul tools that Huo Yuhao didn't know the names to. Soon enough, Huo Yuhao saw the elongated warehouses in the soul formation. Overall, they looked narrow and long, and they were placed to the sides of the soul formation, so that they could replenish it at any time. There were 500 Soul Engineers in this ordinary Soul Engineer Legion. Not only were they fully equipped with soul tools, they even had linked soul tools. Once they attacked, they were very destructive. The soul tools they had were definitely much stronger than the ones Shrek City had before. Di Qian's wariness of humans was not unfounded. As soul tools developed, the balance between soul beasts and humans was disrupted. Although soul beasts had the beast god, humans were overall getting much stronger than soul beasts. Given such a soul formation, even a 100,000-man army might not be able to breach it. Linked soul tools could greatly harm them before the soul tools exhausted their power. This was also why a Soul Engineer Legion was so terrifying. They simply toured the soul formation in a round of supervision. To the other Soul Engineers, this was a routine inspection, and it wasn't their first time. However, Huo Yuhao was delighted. Although he couldn't imprint the production method of every soul tool there into memory, he could still remember the arrangement of this soul formation, the uses of the soul tools, and how they coordinated with one another. This was undoubtedly great knowledge for the future 3 soul engineer legions of Shrek Academy. Are both of you coming to our side to rest and take a cup of tea? Huo Yuhao asked respectfully. He didn't dare to treat evil soul masters poorly. He wasn't even a titled Doluo. His Soul Engineer Legion was also not as great as the Soul Engineer Legions in the hand that protects the nation. He couldn't afford to offend these powerful evil soul masters. All right, we shall do so. I wonder if Commander Guo has any good stuff. Nangong Wan asked. I've prepared them for both of you, Guo Na replied softly. Guo Nu's tent was to the left of the soul formation. Every commander of a Soul Engineer Legion had his own tent. The so-called getting a cup of tea was in fact a feast. Guo Nu had long prepared things. He invited Huo Yuhao, Nangong Wan, and the 6 evil soul masters into his tent for the feast. He first gave them a toast before asking his subordinates to bring some other stuff in. Guo Nu smiled as he said, "Your Majesty, please put in some good words for me in front of the imperial tutor." After this, he gestured, and a few of his subordinates opened a few cases. The aura of metal mixed with a killing aura was released. Nangong Wan's eyes brightened, and he subconsciously said, "This is great stuff. Although they aren't very strong, they are still decent enough." There were 4 cases. One of them contained 3 Class 7 stationary soul cannon shells. The other 3 cases contained Class 5 stationary soul cannon shells. There were 10 of them in each case. Although they were only Class 5 and 7 soul cannon shells, there were a large number of them. If they were sold, they could be exchanged for an astronomical number of gold soul coins. Soul Engineer Legions lacked everything except for soul tools. Furthermore, Guo Nu was clearly aware that evil soul masters loved stationary soul cannon shells. They were powerful, and had a great effective range. At any time, they were strategic resources. Even if they were sold somewhere else and to any empire, they were well loved. 7. Keep them for now. We can divide them later. Commander Guo is too kind. It seems like the 2nd Soul Engineer Legion will only get stronger under your leadership. Although Nangong Wan was greedy, his own life was more important. He gave all of them to Huo Yuhao as a gift. At the very least, he hoped Huo Yuhao would be more willing to remove his restrictions in the future. Huo Yuhao naturally didn't stand on ceremony. This was good stuff. He had used almost all of the stationary soul cannon shells he had obtained from Radiant City during the Beast Wave. What he lacked right now was advanced stationary soul cannon shells. This video will end here.